Hello again. Welcome to another edition of Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Bob Anthony.
And I'm their guest and friend, Alan Singer.
Dr. Alan Singer, educator, historian, regular Media Watch personnel. so when his schedule allows and we can persuade him to be with us, which is good. Before we get into stuff and issues that are germane to what we normally try to do as Media Watch, I need to call out some tributes and pay tribute to two individuals that have been instrumental in the media world as far as we know, in front of the cameras and behind the cameras. My good friend and colleague, Cliff Frazier, passed back on February 3rd. And a lot of people not in media would not be familiar with Cliff, but NGOs and people in the international community that have been in and out of the UN know that he's done a lot of work in that area as well. But he basically started out in Detroit, where he's from originally, as an actor, but he and Woody King, some of you may know, the entrepreneur, founder, New Federal Theater, producer, playwright, documentarian, another stalwart African-American pioneer in the arts. They came from Detroit to New York back in the 60s. And Cliff started out as an actor, but when Dr. King passed, he decided he needed to do more for the community to help fulfill Dr. King's dream. And so he basically strapped on all kinds of things. Let me quote a little bit from his bio obit. Cliff lived a life devoted to the beloved community, quote, during the 60s, 70s, and 80s, alongside Ossie Davis, who was the driving force. Cliff helped change the face of the media industry through organizations like Community Film Workshop Council, Third World Cinema, and the Institute of New Cinema Artists, INCA. They were responsible for training and obtaining opportunities of employment for more than 2,000 Black, Latinos, Asians, and individuals from low-income communities throughout the United States and Puerto Rico in the film, television, recording, advertising, and allied media industries. And I can tell you it's probably more than 2,000, but a lot of folk were seriously helped by Cliff. He also was director of the MLK Center in the Bronx, which he directed for actually probably until he passed. He was on CUNY faculty. Cliff basically was a man for all seasons, with an eye and an ear and a heart for helping the usually disenfranchised communities and people of color. I got to know him in the early 70s when my good friend Christine Spencer asked me to go down and help with the Third World Cinema community, helping to instruct new wannabe writers and camera people in broadcasting. And so I helped out there, and from the day till today, or till the day he passed, Cliff and I had been close colleagues and supporters and advisors over the years. So I'm going to miss him dearly. We're taping a couple of days before his funeral, which is going to be at the Abyssinian Baptist Church this coming Saturday. We're going to be airing the following Monday. So you'll be seeing this after he's been memorialized and funeralized. But that's my hats off in tribute to Cliff Frazier. And Bob, I know you've got some stuff for another stalwart pioneer in the media, and that's Gloria Rojas, who also passed recently.
Yes, I'm sure that a lot of people from our era remember her appearances on the local ABC net channel, WABC, here in New York City. And
with CBS as well. She was the first Latina, I think,
right.
in the New York market. First
Absolutely.
Latina reporter on camera.
And I remember my mother noticing, and my father taking note back then. She was local in the 70s and 80s here in New York. And as one of the few people of color that you would see night after night doing the news, it was like a reassuring note that progress was being made. And she was a big cog in the news gathering wheel back at that time. And she didn't just do it for herself, she helped others climb the ladder, including, for better or worse, one gentleman known as Geraldo Rivera. She helped get noticed and got his basic career going. If I can, I'm going to try to briefly share her image, her picture here, if that's okay, Eric.
That'd be good.
And,
folks need to remember what Gloria looked like back in the day.
Yes.
Very attractive reporter and was a reporter's reporter, street savvy, really sharp journalist.
And she basically covered, I mean, I'm just looking at the dates that she worked with the local news, and basically took me from high school to the beginning of my newspaper career. I mean, even though I wasn't, I was in a different city, I would, occasionally get back to New York and see her reporting. So yeah, a big loss at 82. We miss her. She definitely gave her all to the people who followed her. So kudos for a life well lived for Gloria Rojas.
Indeed. And speaking of media and media things, the story we've been ignoring just because we needed to see how it would play out, but it played out two different ways, didn't it? Bob, brief us on the Sarah Palin story while you're at it, real quick, and then
okay.
I definitely need Alan to weigh in on that.
Yes, and I know Alan will have a good historical perspective on this and a lot to add. But as we're airing, we're just a day beyond the jury verdict that basically said that Sarah Palin had no grounds to expect any damages from a mistake the New York Times made in an editorial piece. It's
a libel suit that she filed against the New York Times.
Right. It was a legitimate error in the Times reporting in connecting her. It's a little too deep to get into right now, but it was an error in the New York Times reporting. But the jury found that there was not enough there that amounts to libel. And the interesting thing in this case is that the judge dismissed the case while the jury was still deliberating. They didn't know about his dismissing the case, but he dismissed it ahead of the jury verdict because even he knew there was nothing there and would have vacated the jury verdict had it come out the other way. But Alan, I know you have a lot more on this in terms of
a couple of things. The first is that the Times actually apologized the next day for the error. And the editor who was responsible for it took full responsibility. Given the apology, there was clearly no malicious intent. And under the United States libel laws, someone who claims they were liable has to be able to demonstrate that the person who did this act did it with malicious intent. If they apologized immediately because they realized it was a mistake, it doesn't constitute libel. On the other hand, it might be very difficult to libel Sarah Palin given the number of ridiculous things she has said during her career.
Well, but see now, Alan, let's not editorialize because we both know, all of us in this room, quote room, know that this judge, using precedent and a standard that was set in 1964 in another New York Times suit, ruled on the merits of the fact that there was no malice. The plaintiff didn't have enough proof that there was malicious intent. And so the judge said, you miss your burden of proof, this suit is meritless. But
one of the reasons that this is being pursued is because there is on the political right an effort to get Sullivan revisited.
Bingo.
To get the standard
where I was going. Go ahead.
Get the standard for libel lowered. And at least two of the more right-wing justices on the Supreme Court, Alito and Thomas, have both called for a revisiting of the Sullivan standard.
Yep.
Now, this is scary.
That's
because
exactly right.
If you lower the standard and you say, any mistake, even if it was not malicious,
There you go.
is subject to libel. What you're doing is you're putting fear into reporters, into editors. You're
That's right.
telling them you can't make any mistakes because
Yep.
then you're going to be subject to suit.
Yep.
And as a result, it silences the free press in the United States.
Right. And
So the Sullivan decision was a very important decision defending a free press. And if
indeed,
that gets overturned by the political right on the Supreme Court, it is a silencing in much the same way as the attack on critical race theory has been used as an effort to silence teachers.
Yep. Yep. That's what I'm afraid of. That's what I'm afraid for. And hopefully, I don't know whether you can actually kill it with due prejudice that you can't bring it back at that appellate level. Who knows? I don't know how this plays out, but I'm hoping it dies at the next level of appeal, because I think the judge is right. He says, whatever happens here, we know she's going to be appealing this ruling. And so I want the full appellate branch to see what the jury thought, based separate from the fact that I didn't think they met their burden of proof. A jury has now spoken. Let's see what happens if and when she spends the money to take it to an appeals court. Maybe if she get hits with legal fees on both sides, if she goes to another round, she might think twice about taking it to another level. Who knows?
I suspect Sarah Palin is not funding this.
Uh-huh.
There's a lot of right-wing money that's been used to attack school boards, that's been used to rally election support. There's a lot of money out there that's going to back this case.
I think you are correct about that. So I don't think this game is over yet. Let's just keep our fingers crossed and see what plays out down the road.
Let me just drive in one point. If the Times had been hit with as much as $1 of compensatory or punitive damages, in this case, let's say the judge, the jury felt, yes, you're right, but you only deserve $1. That sets a precedent that can be used in future cases for a lot more money and for a lot more damages. It says that, yes, you can declare something like this libel, and that by itself not just chills, would freeze a lot of journalism. So this is deadly important, what just went down this week, and what happens at the appellate level is important, just to drive in the point.
I am fearful of what happens at the next level. That's what I'm fearful of. But anyway, because we got a lot more to cover, let's see what else we could move into. What was on our list, judicial-wise, January 6th Commission, doing their deep dive into the false electors. And it's no longer just 14 false electors that have been subpoenaed by the January 6th Commission, folks. It's now up to 20. And they are honing in, and some of those people are supposedly set to testify early in March, sometime in March. I also remember reading something about Rudy Giuliani, who was quite complicit in the false electoral scheme. He's the one who helped them draft some of those wordings and stuff from my reading that went out to all these 7 states. I could probably pull all 7 out of my brain, but I know New Mexico and Nevada parts of it, Wisconsin's part of it, Georgia's part of it, 7 states anyway, false electors. But the investigation now has spread to how deep and how long-term planning, because it's like November when this stuff got kicked into gear, right after Trump lost the election, they started hatching this stuff. And then they started drafting all these bogus slates and all that stuff. And so it was coordinated. And so what you now have is coordination on the attempted coup level. And now you have coordination on the state level with these people trying to run for all these other offices like Secretary of State or election chairperson for the county, the people who oversees the elections at the various levels. And the fact that, what was it, Bobby was saying about some legislator out in Wisconsin who was egging on the crowd, saying it was still, you can still call back the electoral count votes from his state. because Trump really won. Biden didn't. They keep this stuff up from now, like Trump still keeping that big lie up. It's going to throw our not only future elections into chaos, it's going to throw the democratic process into chaos. And Alan, you were talking about reminiscent to how Germany went down in the 30s with this kinds of an assault.
There's a political scientist at Yale. His name is Timothy Snyder, and he's done some op-eds for the Times. And Snyder is probably the greatest expert on the rise of fascism and its threat to democracy in Eastern Europe, both today and in the past. Now, in Hungary and in Turkey, in Belarus, we have authoritarian, anti-democratic candidates who have been elected into office to dismantle democracy. And the president of Hungary calls it illiberal democracy.
Yeah, right.
We use the democratic process to get rid of democratic values. And what Snyder points out, and I think it's very telling, is that in Germany, Hitler came to power through the electoral process. It's a very divided country. It's in the middle of the Great Depression, and Germany has suffered much greater. There's a very strong socialist and communist movement. Hitler's party, the Nazi Party, is the largest party in the Reichstag, the German parliament, but it's about a third of the candidates. But the president picks Hitler to set up the new government. Once Hitler is in office, it takes him 18 months to completely end democracy in Germany. They have set fire to the Reichstag and use that as an excuse to close the parliament. They then launch attacks on the communists and the socialists, both electorally, and they have their own fascist squads, the brown shirts, that just go around beating up striking workers.
They had launched an attempted coup prior to them using the political process that failed, correct? So what we're looking at is this actual physical attempt on January 6th in this country, the actual let's take it over by force and make them do what we want them to do. And then the backtrack and end around, let's go put our people into these electoral processes, slates, and take over using the democratic system to put our people in power. So we're looking at a redux playbook of what the Nazis did.
What you have is election deniers running to run the next election. In Ohio, you have candidates are doing their best to out-Trump Trump. They all want to be the Trumpian candidate. And you have candidates running for Senate who are saying the electoral process doesn't work, it was all fraud. I mean, this is a very scary phenomenon. I can't remember another time when the defeated party just argued that the election was not valid. Maybe in 1877. In 2000, when the election was much closer, Al Gore accepted a questionable Supreme Court ruling because he did not want to divide the nation. And he did not want to, he wanted to maintain the democratic process. We now have people who have no commitment to the democratic process, no commitment to democratic values. They want to win. One of the things that's most interesting is that Senator McConnell, who's not someone I respect, he is very disturbed that these candidates have no respect for the democratic process.
You're exactly right, Alan. They're attacking and Eric, they're attacking the mechanism. They're attacking the process of the election system and changing it to a position which is useful for them. I mean, that incident in Wisconsin this week, there was a rally in the Capitol by a gubernatorial candidate who says that it's still possible for Wisconsin to withdraw its controls, and he's trying to get other states to do the same. And of course, that's in the books. That there's nothing there that can be changed, and he wants to eliminate the election commission in the state. So we have people going after the mechanism, changing it to their own good, not respecting the democratic process. So correct, this is dangerous.
You got a problem in that all these people are part of what supposedly is a bona fide political party in this country called the Republican Party. And unfortunately, that party, by its very actions on denying the free and fair transfer of power in a valid election and subscribing to the big lie, has abdicated any sense of a democratic party, small d, of democratic politics, small d, and of what's in the best interest of the political life and the actual well-being of the country. All they want to do is get in power, to exercise power, to do what they've been doing, line their pockets, make their friends richer, and disregard the needs of the general population. That's my take on that. But guess what? Just like Hitler and the Nazis used the political system, if the rest of us don't wake up, they're going to do the same here in this country. But one bright ray of hope that the judicial system can sometimes work is last week's ruling. When you air this, it's last week's ruling that was brought against Remington, the gun manufacturer, in favor of the Sandy Hook families who sued them. And Bob, what was it? 73 million, I believe.
It was a $73 million settlement with the families of the victims. The 26 victims, or is that right?
26 families, or 20 families and one survivor, something like that.
Okay.
In the 20s. But the bottom line is it took them 7 years, and they had to use a small wrinkle in the legal system because most of these gun manufacturers have some kind of blanket immunity. But because their lawyer was shrewd and sharp, and very smart and very determined, and the families were very determined, because Remington offered to settle for like 33 million. And they said, no, we don't want just money. There's stuff that we want. And they proceeded and persisted. And in the final analysis, the marketing concept, that's the window that they used to put the wedge in and said, look, people, it's not about their immunity for sales, it's how they marketed. And they marketed to vulnerable young people who were not that stable, and they won on the merits of that argument. And part of the settlement, which was what they were actually fighting for, was the return, the discovery process of getting the internal documents from Remington that showed all these internal memos and emails and all that stuff about how do we market it to make these young men more readily buy our, I mean, this is what they fought to get, and they won. And I'm saying 3 cheers for the criminal justice system, at least in one instance in this country, for the downtrodden.
Eric, I have to tell you, I wish I could be as positive as you are. It was a settlement. It was not a court ruling, which means that Remington agreed to pay the 73 mil. The court ruling was that Remington had to provide them with the paperwork. And once Remington had to provide them with the paperwork, it then proceeded to a settlement. But in the settlement, Remington takes no responsibility for what happened. Remington is not obligated in any way other than to pay up. And I think the reason Remington is paying up is because this was the most blatant of the mass shooting cases, because Remington had marketed their weapon as a weapon of war. And because there was no ruling, this will not have any legal precedent.
No, you're correct on that. Here is the silver lining, though. The internal documents that they get, that they can now make public, will actually give a sense of how most of these gun manufacturers peddle their product. And so in the final analysis, hopefully they might be able to use that going forward against the other gun manufacturers.
I can still see the other manufacturers saying, well, that's not us.
They're going to
Yeah,
try.
so, yeah, so
They're going
we'll
to try.
see how much this has an effect, but yeah. And we have about 2.5 minutes left.
That's all? Okay, I thought we had about 5. Well, what was the other key one that we wanted to talk about, possibly?
Well, we were going to discuss what happened with the naming issues.
Can we do that in 2 minutes, just as a tease? We can always come back, revisit it.
Well, Alabama had a building on the flagship college that was co-named after the first African-American woman who went to the college, but also named after a governor who in the 1920s and 30s was supposedly a progressive governor in Alabama. He was also the leader of the KKK in Montgomery. And so the university initially said, we'll co-name the building as a compromise. But there was such an outrage that how could a building be named after the leader of the Klan, that they finally made the decision, the Board of Trustees, to remove that governor's name from the building.
Okay, all right.
I think establishing that no public monuments should be named after racist Klan leaders, even in Alabama. Though in Montgomery at the Capitol building, they still have a statue of Jefferson Davis and of James Marion Sims. So it's a small step, but I think it's an important step.
Okay, well, we'll visit this again because we have something about Malvern that you're going to talk to us about the next time, right?
Yes.
It doesn't exist just in the South. So I guess this is about it for us. We're about
No, we have about 40 seconds, but yeah, I'm surprised that Montgomery still has Jefferson Davis, even though Richmond has lifted him away. So,
hey, you know, some stuff die hard and slow, but we'll just keep pushing. Look, folks, this has been brought to you by the good graces of EVT Educational Productions, Manhattan Neighborhood Network, and Zoom. And this has been Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Bob Anthony. Catch up to us on Twitter and YouTube at Media Watch EVT.
And I'm their friend and guest, Alan Singer. Thank you for having me tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Singer, educator, historian. Always a pleasure. And folks, stay safe. We'll catch you the next time.